So today we have Steve Calloway from Olympus Title. Steve has been in real estate and a lot of other different capacities in addition to title. So he's well versed in the whole spectrum of the real estate transaction process. And we're going to talk about what Steve does day in, day out, which is title work. And Steve is one of the owners of Olympus Title. So thanks for joining us today, Steve. And
thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And, what we want to do today is just share some insight as to, why is it important for a home buyer to really be mindful of who's doing their closing. It's not like getting milk. It's not like buying bread. You should have, as a buyer, a title company on your side looking out for your interests. So why is that important?
Well, a title company does a lot of work that is not familiar to a home buyer. So you need to go with an expert in the industry, someone with 20 plus years of experience. Because you don't have the ability to take the work on yourself. You don't have the ability to even really review the work yourself, and most importantly, or to complete the work yourself. You need to go with an industry expert, someone who has, again, years and years of experience. Otherwise, you're not even going to know if the work is being done or done correctly.
Right. So tell me a little bit about your background, Steve. Some of the things you've done. I know personally because we've worked together, but can you explain for the listeners so they can get a sense of who you are, what you've done?
Well, I've been in the title business as an owner for the last 16 years, but prior to that, I sold titles, appraisals, titles, and closings for a national vendor. And prior to that, I was in the mortgage business for 7 years. So, I certainly do think that I have table presence when conducting a settlement. When you're signing the loan documents, there's nobody really more experienced, more comfortable with explaining the loan documents to you than someone who came from the lending industry and then matriculated into the title world.
Okay, so in Maryland and in a lot of other states, the buyer has the right to choose their title company. Why?
Well, I believe that Maryland Insurance Administration does not want buyers to feel forced to go with the choice of their realtor, the choice of their lender. They want the independence. They want the buyer to be in control of the situation. If just because a lender works with a title company, over and over again, doesn't mean that they're the best out there. They may just be in an office that's convenient to them. Again, Maryland Insurance Administration has a statute on the book that says the home buyer always has the ability to select the title company. They want the buyer in charge of that part of the equation.
So does the title company represent anyone in the deal, or are they just a neutral party? Because some people look at a title company as just being this independent entity that doesn't have a vested interest in advocating for the buyer or seller. Is that true, or do they have allegiance to the buyer, or do they have allegiance to the seller?
Well, they would certainly come down on the side of the buyer because we're an insurance agency and we issue an owner's insurance policy to the buyer. So we clearly represent the buyer and the lender at the table, not the seller.
Okay. And so if a seller insists, say for instance, you have a property that was rehabbed, and we see that all the time. You have to use XYZ title company, right? Should a buyer be sort of suspicious of that?
Well, it's primarily done out of laziness or comfort and convenience to the seller. If a rehabber uses the same title company to buy his houses over and over again, it's just familiarity. But that really is not in the buyer's best interest. The buyer would want an independent person to come and take a second look at the facts of the case. That is not a good idea at all. You would clearly want a third party involved in the equation, not someone who is involved in the equation back in the threat of title. You would want someone new to take a look at it. Unfortunately, if the existing title company or the seller had made an error, they would have the ability to cover up their own error, bury their own skeleton, so to speak. So you would certainly want a new party to that mix.
Right. I agree. And, sometimes there's issues with title that, can be de-emphasized, or there be sort of the transaction doesn't get the full level of due diligence that it could potentially get if you get a new title company in there that is just clean slate, no vested interest, and is there to purely represent the buyer.
Right. Yes. Again, the existing title company for the seller, it would behoove them to move the transaction along and, again, bury their own skeleton, push the error further back in the chain of title. Whereas a new title company coming into the equation, it would be fresh snow, and we would not want to take on a deal that was not clean and clear. So we would certainly do all of the work in order to pass clear title.
So can you walk me through, you get a new buyer that comes in and this is their first house. Walk me through like how the property transfers from the owner to me, the buyer, and what you do to make that happen.
Okay, we would go to the courthouse in the county that the property was located in. We would search both the property address and the property names of the existing buyers and sellers, determine, in fact, who does own the property, make sure that all parties that do own the property have signed the contract. That's a biggie. Make sure that they're living. That's another biggie. And then we would search for any existing mortgages against that property that had been taken out by the owners. We would also search the existing owners and search for any judgments that may be against the existing owners. And we would obtain a written payoff for any mortgages against the home. And then at the actual settlement itself, we would pay off the existing mortgages.
Okay.
At that point, after settlement, we would take the deed to the courthouse and record it, and the deed would then be vested in the new buyer's name.
Okay. So there's a lot of legal documentation that's created to release the lien or loan from the seller, and then create another lien in the buyer's name and add the buyer's name to the new title and record everything so everything is above board and the mortgage company's happy and the right owners are recorded.
Yes, that's correct. In Maryland, a deed does have to be prepared by an attorney licensed to practice law in the state of Maryland.
Yes. And so what about some of the problems that pop up? Because sometimes you get, like, for instance, I have one transaction right now where the seller did a refinance back in 2006 or 7, okay? And they, for one, you can't find their old HUD one, okay? And when they did the refinance back then, the title company forgot or did not record the release of the old mortgage. And subsequent to the refinance, obviously the mortgage was sold numerous times. And so here we are in present day. The title company did a search like you would do, like you just described, and discovered that there was mortgages still outstanding, even subsequent to new mortgages being recorded.
Right.
And so, Murphy's Law, the title company's no longer in existence.
Right.
They can't find any of the documentation. And the chain of transfers from the mortgage companies, obviously things got shuffled around. So the buyers end up walking because the title company couldn't get clear title.
Right.
So what would you do in a situation like that? I know that's a very complicated fact pattern, but that's a real life situation that I'm dealing with right now. What would you do in that kind of scenario?
Well, again, we would visit the first question you posed to me is that why would how do you pick a title company? Why is picking a title company important to you?
Mm-hmm.
You would want a title company with sufficient experience to either A, run it down themselves,
Mm-hmm.
or with sufficient gravitas with their underwriter who could write over and ensure any error, in the chain of title.
Mm-hmm.
The title company at that point could assume the liability for that, mysterious unpaid off, Susquehanna Bank or whatever the, bank that's been sold 5 times, Loyola Bank that's been sold and transferred 5 times.
Mm-hmm.
With a large enough title company who had sufficient, relationship with their existing underwriter,
Mm-hmm.
then we could go to our underwriter and go, hey, I've got this problem. Is it a 10 problem? Is it a 1 problem? Is it a 4 problem? Again, at the end of the day, we're an insurance company, so certainly assume a comfortable level of risk. And the right title company could issue you clear title, an owner's policy, a lender's policy, and take exception to that.
Mm-hmm.
So again, picking a title company with enough experience, who's dealt with that before, again, is going to get you in the home.
Right.
We're picking somebody that the loan officer's buddy is, or who lives down the street, or whose office is down the street, and it's convenient. May not be in the buyer's best interest. No one likes a skeleton, and nobody wants to buy a problem.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, you're a business owner, and you can make a business decision.
Right.
That's the fact of the matter. You go to the underwriter, you sit, you chat with the underwriter, and depending on the folks' comfort level, and the specifics of the case, the business decision is made.
Right. Right.
I mean, again, if it's commercial credit that paid itself off 4 times in a year, and they happen to leave open a $25,000 line of credit from 1986, then it's a no-brainer. If it's $250,000 and it's last year, then it rises to the to a different level of seriousness.
Yeah, I agree. There's degrees of judgment involved when absorbing that risk and the facts, and every case is going to be a little bit different.
Correct.
Okay. So what are fees? Like, for instance, if I'm buying a house and I remember when we bought our first house, my wife and I, we were just so clueless as to what these fees were for. I mean, you could have put fees on there for things that we shouldn't have paid, and we would have paid it because we just did not understand the line items on the HUD. So what are some of the fees? What are some of the typical fees, and what are some of the fees that they can expect when they go to closing?
Well, a title company historically is going to charge you maybe 4 fees. We prefer to bundle the fees and so that the settlement statement does not look, extremely busy.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather lump them in. We charge a settlement fee, which would be, the lion's share of the work that would, encompass most of the work that we do. We would also charge a title examination fee, which is where the the attorney for the title company, or an office manager for the title company, would sit and actually review the paperwork that came back from the courthouse from the abstract. We would sit and look through the land records.
Mm-hmm.
We would, the abstractor, the person who actually gets in their car, goes to the courthouse, does the search, charges a fee on a settlement statement, and then the actual insurance policy itself.
Mm-hmm.
Policy is mandatory, and that protects the bank, the mortgage company, the lender in the case. And then there's an owner's policy, which protects the owner, the buyer of the property.
Mm-hmm.
So the main 3 fees would be the settlement statement or settlement fee, the title exam, and the abstract fee, and then the actual insurance. So those would be the 4.
And on average, what for your typical house in Maryland is around $200,000. What would be the fees on average associated with that ballpark?
I would say 1% would be a good number. So maybe
Okay.
$2,000.
Okay. That's
Maybe 1% would be a number.
right.
There are a certain amount of set fees. So if you bought an $80,000 house, that percentage might be closer to 2%. But if you bought a $400,000 house, then that percentage certainly goes down
Okay. Okay.
because
That's
it's
fair
spread
enough.
out over larger money.
Right. Right. So the policy, I guess there's a premium that they pay for the policy, right? It's going to
Correct.
be based on the value of the property.
Yes, the purchase price of the property. Your owner's policy is based on the purchase price of the property, and the lender's policy is based on the loan amount.
Okay. Okay.
And
And
your owner's policy lasts as long as you own the property, and it is transferable.
okay. So if I'm buying a house, the owner's policy from the seller can be transferred to me.
It can be transferred to you in the form of reduced fees for your new policy. Yes.
Oh, okay. Got it. Got it.
The actual policy itself doesn't it's not handed to you, as are the keys in the garage door opener.
Hmm.
But the information is incorporated into the pricing of the new policies. Yes.
And so, like, I've got title insurance, and I don't even remember who did my title insurance. I know I have it. I've been
Right.
in my house like forever. So don't ask me who my policy is through, or even ask me how to get in contact with them. So, how,
Well, the easy answer to that question is that historically it's labeled on the top of your deed.
hmm
After recording return documents too, and it would have the title company written across the top of that, and then that would help you identify your underwriter who
okay,
actually issued you the policy.
right. And then, obviously, if you have your documents, if I probably do have my documents, and I could just look through, and then the binder would be in there. But when would I have to use my title insurance?
Well, the quick answer would be never.
Hmm.
But if you had a problem with an encroachment onto your property, a neighbor is building a shed and it or putting up a fence, building a garage, and it's clearly comes onto your property. That would be probably the most prevalent case. Most often, folks, it's boundary line disputes.
Hmm.
Quick answer. If you got a collection notice for property taxes that were not paid in the past,
Hmm.
from prior to your purchasing the property,
Hmm.
that would be another thought that pops up. Homeowners association dues from prior to when you own the property, water bill from prior to when you own the property.
Hmm.
Things might rise to that occasion.
Have you ever seen where a legitimate claim is made against the title and the mortgage policy, and the owner's policy had to come in and cure the mortgage company and cure the property owner, meaning make them whole again?
That's exactly the purpose of it. So the quick answer to that would be yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And what kind of circumstance was that?
I don't remember specifically.
Uh-huh. Okay.
No.
But people do use it, I guess.
People do use it. Owners use it. But for the most part, if we do our work correctly,
Mhm.
it's rarely exercised.
Okay.
Thank the good Lord.
And so, title companies are usually the first stop, whoever did your closing. But if the title company is no longer in existence, you could still go to the company that wrote the policy.
Exactly. That would be labeled the underwriter,
Right. Okay.
which would be one of a half dozen national vendors.
Hmm. Okay. All right. That's fair enough. So that pretty much explains the process. I think we went over, what happens when you're under contract, the things that you guys do, some of the problems that comes up, and how you solve them, right? And the fees involved,
Right.
which
I think we've one large omission, and that's service.
right.
We're in a service business. So again, the first question posed, how do you pick your title company? You've got to pick someone who knows and understands. This is a title. This is a service-driven industry.
Mm-hmm.
If both buyers are working and we need to settle in the evening, then you've got to have a title company that says, of course, we'll settle in the evening, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. When do you need to settle? That's
Right.
when. You've got sellers who are divorcing and they can't be in the same room with each other, so they need to have a split closing. The title company's got to say the word yes.
Right.
You've got sellers who've already moved out of state. Are you going to pick a title company that doesn't have the wherewithal to employ some folks in outside the state to get it done? Doesn't have the resources to make that happen. No, you've got to go with a title company who has a larger footprint than just the office down the street.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's true. Service is important because, as you know, there's always delays, there's always changes last minute, and the more flexible the title company is, it makes the deal close so much easier.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've got to be both proactive and reactive, and that's that's a difficult balance. But yeah.
So, other than service, we know you guys give bang up service, but typically I try to make an irresistible offer just for the folks that listen in and that are on the workshop videos online. And when we do webinars like this, we make an offer just for the listeners, just for the folks that tuned in, so that they get something that no one else has.
Sure.
And it's up to you if you want to make an offer like that today for folks that is unique just to them. Do you have an offer like that to propose to them, or
is there something that you're thinking? Is there something that a title company? Are you talking any part of the equation that we could sweeten the deal? Are you talking a home warranty? Are you talking?
I'm talking anything that you want to make as an offer to as a special incentive for them to use.
Sure.
Title.
I would say then, a free owner's insurance policy. Your lender's insurance policy is mandatory.
Okay.
Anybody who gets a mortgage has to have lender's title insurance, but your owner's insurance policy is optional.
Wow.
Any folks who come to us, through this engagement, we would offer a free owner's insurance title policy.
So they get
that lasts for as long as they own their property.
Wow.
And Rich, I'll just tell you this to be clear. You holding the deed in your hand doesn't mean that you own the house.
Right.
Because if the title work is not right, then the deed is not right.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're holding your owner's title insurance policy in your hand, that's the guarantee that you own the house.
Yeah, you're right about that, because you could always challenge someone's ownership rights.
Exactly. The deed's only as good as who signed it or who prepared it or who recorded it. There's a lot of pitfalls along the equation.
Yeah.
A lot of folks, the aforementioned, seller's title company. Well, the ex-wife wasn't around, but we got her signature on something anyway.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that are recorded that shouldn't be recorded. Yeah, I know. I see it there too all the time. But that's wonderful. I mean, if they basically get a free owner's policy. I don't think anyone else anywhere is giving out a free owner's policy. That's huge.
Well, we appreciate our partnership with you and look forward to continuing our relationship.
Oh, definitely. That's without a doubt. So, Steve, I want to thank you for spending your time out of your busy schedule just to, talk about the process, because I think it's important for folks to at least have some kind of context as to, what the process is like, and to break things down in a simple way so that they can feel comfortable at least knowing what's going on.
Right. Yeah. Oftentimes title companies behind the scene, owners don't, buyers don't really get involved at, they typically show up at the settlement table. They've been intimately involved, in the beginning of the stages with the realtor, and then they have the love-hate relationship with the lender.
Mm-hmm.
They show up at our office, or we at their office, and we kind of tie things up in a pretty little bow for them. So
Yeah. Well, we appreciate you. I mean, we've seen you work firsthand, so we could attest to the quality of service and the flexibility and the attention to detail. I'm sure folks are going to be impressed. And again, thank you for sharing this valuable information, and especially for making that very considerate offer to give folks.
yep, you can count on us.
Yeah, definitely. But again, thank you. Appreciate it. And, we got to do this again sometime.
Terrific. I look forward to it. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Steve.
Bye.
All right.